Good afternoon. Welcome to the 12th strategic webinar in the EUROCONTROL Stakeholder Forum series. My name is Manish Khurana. I'm the Business Development Manager at EUROCONTROL. Unmanned drones are a part of a group of new entrants that will share the airspace in future with conventional airspace users. The challenge for aviation community is to integrate manned and unmanned traffic in a safe, secure, equitable, and efficient manner. This is particularly challenging in a complex and dense urban environment. USpace will provide an automated digital traffic management system to manage manned and unmanned traffic in dense and complex environments that requires high levels of autonomy, connectivity, and integration with existing ATM system. To discuss the challenges and opportunities of urban air mobility, we will focus on a number of objectives in this webinar today. We will look at the role of ANSPs in Europe to implement USpace. And this is particularly relevant after the submission and release of the USpace regulation earlier this year. We will look at strategic drivers for the UAM vehicle manufacturers. Where does Green Deal sit in? What is the business case? What are their challenges? What are they aiming for? We will then discuss on funding options to fund the infrastructure development for UAM and USpace in Europe. And last, but certainly not least, very importantly, we would like to have a debate on how to address traffic congestion needs of European cities via UAM. Now, before we get set into the motion, I just want to remind people that they are more than welcome to submit their Q&A questions through which we'll use in the Q&A session. Please use the Q&A button to submit your questions, and please use the chat button to let us know if you've got any technical problems, and we'll try and do the best we can. To kick off today's webinar, we will first listen to opening remarks from Raul Medina Caballero and Eamon Brennan. Raul is the DGCA of Spain and President of EUROCONTROL's Provisional Council. Eamon Brennan is the Director General of EUROCONTROL. This will be followed by a discussion with three panelists who will first deliver a quick presentation about their views and thoughts. We will then have an interactive Q&A session. Now, with that in mind, I would like to invite Raul to deliver his opening remark, followed by Eamon. Raul, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Manish, and good morning to everyone. Well, as you all know, the drone sector has significantly grown in these last few years. And at present, we can see that this growth is taking place almost exponentially, where an increasing number of new entrants, US operators, are vying to obtain a foothold in our airspace. New projects and technological applications are being developed every day in this segment of activity. We must make them compatible with our air transport system, not only to ensure the optimal evolution of the sector and its fully safe development, but also due to the positive impact from an economic and social point of view. Over the last few years, we have seen a great boost in this aircraft and their application. Progress in this field requires a system for the safe and efficient integration and management of the US in airspace. This is where the USpace concept, the European Unmanned Air Traffic Management System, comes into play. This European system for US traffic management is without doubt vital to support commercial drone operations, specifically autonomous and BVLOS operations. USpace is also essential for the safe integration of this new concept or this new sector with traditional aviation. Important steps have been taken so far for its development in the European context, both at technical and regulatory level. The European Aviation Safety Agency, EASA, strongly promoted the regulation adopted by the European Commission a few months ago, late April, after holding very constructive discussion with the member states. This new regulatory framework lays the basis for the development and implementation of US space at the European level. And we allow for the implementation of harmonized and cost-effective management of unmanned aircraft traffic in Europe. Among the most anticipated application for the use of US space is urban air mobility, one of the solutions to address the mobility and environmental pollution problems faced by large cities. Safe urban air mobility solutions are expected to be implemented in a medium-term scenario, so that in this manner, it will be possible to leverage the transportation, emergency, security, and mobility services that this technology will provide. To make this possible, we must face major challenges. But in Europe, we have a powerful knowledge, technological and industrial fabric that will enable us to provide answer to the questions that are yet to be resolved. In this new revolutionary era of air mobility, EUROCONTROL is shaping up to be a key player. In recent years, EUROCONTROL has been fostering a number of programs for the validation of US space services, working closely with the European Commission, member state, the main air navigation service providers, and several experimentation centers. At present, it is the coordinator of the Chorus-Schuan project, a large-scale demonstrator, which for 2 years will demonstrate how US space services and solutions can support integrated urban air mobility flight operations. Over the years to come, we will be witness to a rapid increase in research, innovation, and implementation of US space and urban air mobility concepts. So we must be prepared to meet the current and future challenges ahead. In today's session, we will be able to address issues relevant to the development of this new paradigm with major players from the fields of air navigation service provision, development and manufacturing, as well as financing. I expect this session to be extremely fruitful. On a final note, I would like to highlight EUROCONTROL's initiative to discuss the strategic aspect required for the development of this US space technology, and of course, to thank all other speakers for their contribution. I hope that this webinar will be of great interest to all of you. So thank you very much, and over to you, Imon.
Thank you all. Welcome to the Developing New Space for Urban Air Mobility seminar. It's a really exciting seminar, and I really hope you enjoy it today. One thing I want to say to you is it's very difficult to quantify the growth of UAM and air mobility. Look at these figures for Poland and Croatia, but throughout the world, you're seeing a very, very similar trend, and it's exponential. It's definitely going to grow fast. A thing I want to draw your attention to today, and we should not lose sight of it, is that it's important to remember that aviation safety is paramount. With the increased growth in drones and urban air mobility, we've already seen a report in incidents, and going forward, it's important we develop the industry in a way that's really, really safe. What we need to look at for the future is the way we handle the air traffic. How does this actually work? And we're looking at more complex environments. We're looking at autonomous vehicles. We're looking at mixed airspace users. We're looking at a whole range of products, from air taxis to urban drones, but also remember civil-military integration in civilian airspace. These are things that are really important. So there's a lot of challenges in making sure that the use space is able to cope with many of the complex environments that we face together. I also think it's important remember what EUROCONTROL does. Our role is to support European aviation. We provide technical and operational expertise, and what we're trying to do really is bridge the gap between R&D and deployment to make sure it actually happens in practice. So here we work on building standards and support to regulation. These are really important. You know, we're involved in the Chorus X UAM project, and this is a really good project. And here we act as the coordinator, and we have a number of U-Space solutions which we've demonstrated, and also a number of UAM flight operations. So this is really exciting. If you get a chance, have a look at it on our website. Finally, what I'd like to say is that none of this can happen if we don't work together. We have a really good partnership with EASA, the regulator. We work closely with DG Move and very closely with the CESAR joint undertaking. But remember, it's the totality that makes the system work. We're looking at a paradigm shift in the management of airspace. We're looking at other players coming in to manage the airspace, different products, different companies, different approaches. So we need to work together to make sure it happens. So what's important today is enjoy the seminar, enjoy your afternoon, and I'll pass you over now to Munish, who will give an introduction to everybody who's participating. Enjoy it.
Thank you, Raoul. Thank you, Eamon. Thanks for your thought-provoking words and setting the scene for what I believe is going to be an interesting and hopefully an interactive session. Let me take this opportunity now to introduce my three panelists for this afternoon. The first one is Ismini Kyriazopoulou. Ismini is the head of Air, Maritime and Innovative Transport Division in the Projects Directorate of the European Investment Bank. She's a civil engineer and also holds a law degree. She has been with the EIB since 2013. And has more than 25 years of experience in infrastructure project development, funding, and implementation. So welcome, Ms. Meany. My second panelist is Simon Hockard, who's the Director General of CANSO. All the members of the audience who are joined in from aviation would know him from his CANSO role. But previously, he was the Operations Director at Swanwick Base for NATS in the UK. Simon is also the European Commission-appointed chairman of the Network Management Board, which governs the overall European air traffic network and drives performance improvement across Europe, as well as within EUROCONTROL. He is indeed a member of the Wise Persons Group in Europe, which was established by the European Commission to provide recommendations for future of European ATM. And my last panelist is another very well-known name and a figure, Eduardo Dominguez Puerta. Eduardo joined Vertical Aerospace as Chief Commercial Officer in May 2021. Previously, he served as the CEO of Airbus Urban Air Mobility Division, which was created in 2018, where he led all the eVTOL-related efforts, including technologies, air traffic management, infrastructure, and regulatory activities. So welcome to all three of you. Really delighted that we are here. What we're going to do now is I'm going to ask my first panelist, Simon, to present your views, and we'll go one by one, followed by a Q&A session. So Simon, the floor is yours.
Good morning, or good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. I suppose, firstly, let me say thank you. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you for the invitation to participate. So often, I think, in this industry, we spend so much time looking backwards, and this is much more about the future. So, first and foremost, congratulations for making that context really good. Very briefly, what I'll do is just give a quick insight about CANSO for those that don't know us. We're the association for the whole of the ATM industry, consists of both ANSPs and many of the companies and organizations that support them. So as a result, we're sort of the global voice of the air traffic management or ATM industry. And our recently launched brand actually is much more future focused, which is why this is really timely as we talk about shaping our future skies. We also do concentrate on helping raise global ATM performance around the whole of the industry by showing knowledge, expertise, and innovation. Now, okay, that's great, but it's clear that we're now entering a brand new, exciting era for aviation, in which the speed of change and the rate of innovation will be far, far faster than they've been for decades. We've also heard that, from Eamon and Raoul, actually, a wide range of vehicles already, or soon will be, taken to the sky, including small drones, air taxis, new commercial aircraft designs we've not even thought of yet, space flights, supersonic flights, ultra long haul flights, and I could go on. But we need to be ready for this. We need to be ready for the demand for the new services that these new types of airborne vehicles will require. Now, safely accommodating new airspace users into the sky without congestion, without increased delay, will require entirely new ways of thinking, and absolutely agreeing with what Eamon said, increased collaboration amongst the broader aviation community. And we, together with our members, are shaping our skies and tackling this challenge head on. We're committed to supporting the development of use space for urban air mobility. We're proud to be part of the efforts to pioneer this new level of connectivity. And I am, and we are completely inspired by the innovation and ambitions of our members, partners, and customers. Now, we believe there's five key principles that are absolutely critical to the achievement of the fully integrated airspace system that I believe we all aspire to. Of course, safety is and always will be the top priority. Safely separating vehicles from each other, as well as avoiding obstacles and keeping clear of people, will remain paramount. The second one, another priority, is efficiency. Whatever solution we come up with needs to be cost effective and funded appropriately, whether that's the cost of the services needed to keep vehicles separated or the cost of running the vehicles themselves. And that includes scalability. That's the third one. UAM vehicles and services must be able to scale operations up or down according to user needs and demand. And I think that challenge has been magnified over the past 18 months throughout the entire aviation industry. The fourth one is system integration or interoperability, the ability to integrate with other diverse airspace users demanding entirely different services. And last but not least is sustainability. We need to ensure that we minimize the impact of flying on the environment. UAM will take probably the leading role in reducing emissions across the regional transport network using innovations like electric urban air taxis. But there's also the sustainability of the systems we use. Future airspace systems will require longevity to ensure that innovations are efficient, resourceful, and future-proof. Now, it is extremely important that every key player in the airborne vehicle ecosystem has the same view of what the future should hold and the technology required to support it. I was beginning early on this year, I was beginning to see many different views of what the future could be and no real consistency between them. So in March, we launched the Complete Air Traffic System Global Council, a unique innovation forum which brings together global leaders from more than 25 organizations across the manned and unmanned aviation industries. The group includes global ANSPs, UTM service providers, aircraft manufacturers, drone operators and manufacturers, high-tech companies, airlines, airports, regulatory authorities, space agencies, and even research bodies. We formulated the council to drive the next era of aviation and forge a more adaptable, resilient industry and to explore, imagine, and shape a shared vision for how our global skies can innovate and operate safely in the future. Now, I'm really proud of the work that's been done in the council, and we've created a blueprint for future skies through this unique collaboration. And our roadmap to get there is developing. It's both exciting and essential for the future. So bringing together different industries and perspectives and aligning them around a common vision has been quite an achievement. But it's also offered an important platform for engagement across the full aviation stakeholder spectrum. It's offered national, regional, global stakeholders a single point of access to aviation's future thinking and plans for transformation. It's an insight into the key enablers and drivers we must leverage to invest in, implement what we need to implement into it to achieve all these future transport goals. And the council's made good progress already, and I'm excited we'll be sharing the vision during the World ATM Congress 21 in October. Now, there's an opportunity here to build a digital and automated regional transport network, which is highly connective. And right now, our states, a multitude of companies and citizens all need aviation to step up and deliver. As I said earlier, aviation is an ecosystem and every stakeholder has an important role to play, whether that's encouraging evolution and growth, driving diversity and development, determining the pace, and of course, ensuring the sustainability of the wider aviation industry. The industry is the architect, the ATM industry is the architect of airspace and the current guardian of the skies. It's our job to make sure that as air transport evolves, we evolve with it and support the safe, seamless, and sustainable movement of all airborne vehicles. But we cannot do this alone. We need to work together with all the actors in the ecosystem to make sure that we are evolving our operations, evolving our infrastructure, frameworks, standards, but doing that together and delivering the key building blocks for the new and new varied future for air transport. So on that basis, I'll hand back to you, Manoush. Thank you for listening to my introduction, and back to you.
Thank you, Simon. Thanks for your provocative but thought-provocative words. I like the central message that you've come across, which is the ANSPs are the custodians of airspace. Safety is paramount. It is indeed, no doubt. But I like the fact that you're asking everyone to be flexible and you're asking everyone to be innovative, to look for perhaps a new future where there will be more equitable and fair space for all airspace users. I'd like to now move on to my next speaker, and that is Eduardo. Eduardo, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Munish. Thanks for having us here on behalf of Vertical, and thanks as well to the other panelists. I think this is a great time. I would like to go and look in the past, actually, if I may, Simon, and describe how industry is building up. Because actually it's not about waiting for something to happen. It's about the process of making it a reality. And if I relate to my own experience, 7 years ago, I was asking for money to develop technologies. And it was really hard to find it. But, we managed it. 5 years ago, once we had matured some of those technologies, we were asking for money to develop demonstrators. And the answer from all the financial people was, but wait a minute, there is not yet a regulation for this type of vehicles to operate. Why do you want money? And why do you want to build these demonstrators? And if you see the work that we have jointly done over the last 5 years, I should say, now we have a regulatory framework for our vehicles. EASA has worked brilliantly together with industry, FAA, other regulators around the world, so our vehicles can be certified. And at the same time, EU space regulation is also a big enabler for this whole industry to come up. And that has been developed as well over the last years. So I think it's also time to celebrate a bit all this preparation and to pat ourselves a bit on the back altogether, because we're doing this, for our communities and for societal development. I think that is the end aim that we all have. What are the drivers for the industry, for the vehicle manufacturers? You mentioned safety. I would also go back in history. And, in the 70s, you could actually experience air mobility in New York. And it was a great service until some fatal accidents happened and the whole market collapsed. So let me join you, on that message on safety. I think safety is the paramount value on aviation. We're transporting souls, and I think we need to be very mindful of that. But beyond that, I think the main focus of OEM manufacturers now is on the certification of the products, really fulfillment of all requirements by EASA, CAA, and other regulators, the industrialization, and the scaling of these vehicles. But that is from a pure OEM point of view. Now, From my experience, I can say, it's nearly as difficult to bring these vehicles to market as it is to develop them. And my biggest focus now, beyond the vehicle, is on all the enablers for this ecosystem to come up. And I see clearly beyond policy and regulations that the two big pieces that we need to work together is infrastructure and air traffic management and airspace integration. And this is why I'm so happy to participate with you today, because unless we work together towards that modernized airspace, low altitude airspace management, full integration, interoperability, until we achieve all of that together, I can develop my beautiful VX4s as fast as I want. They won't be able to fly and to bring services. So I think that is a great achievement collectively that we have made over the last 5 years. I think now we need to make the last pushes and continue accelerating, because we will start seeing these vehicles operating very soon. Our plans is to have them certified by end of 2024 and to start commercial operations in 2025, which means there is still a lot to do in the upcoming years, and we should keep the energy. I think we're doing that with the full backing of the society. I think sustainable aviation is a priority, like for the rest of the means of transportation. And we're very happy to be part of this adventure. So thanks to all ANSPs in the world for all what you do. Thanks EUROCONTROL, other regulators for setting the frames for us to operate. And congratulations as well to the other OEMs that I consider pioneers and I really respect. Now there's a real market and there's going to be a real competition. But I'm really proud of what we have achieved collectively over the last years. Thank you very much. Back to you, Munish.
Thank you, Eduardo. Thanks for your inspiring words. Once again, I like the way you've, like Simon, taken us back a little bit and then brought us to the present, and with a view to looking at the future. No doubt the future does look bright, and there are indeed challenges, and thanks for highlighting. You talk about enablers, and there are already questions coming in, I can tell you, in the screen in front of me, where people are they're asking questions about enablers. So hopefully we'll have a very interactive Q&A session. And please, members of the audience, please continue to submit your questions as we go along. Now, ANSPs can do their part. The vehicle manufacturers will bring out the aircrafts. The regulatory bodies will do their work. The policy people will set out the policies. We've seen recently that a lot of investment has gone into the UAM vehicle manufacturing, but there is investment, there's been a lack of investment in the infrastructure development of urban air mobility. Now, to share her thoughts on how European Investment Bank is going to help address that challenge, I'd like to invite Ismini to please go ahead and share her thoughts with the rest of us. Ismini, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Munish. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm really happy to be here with you for this afternoon webinar session. I'm going to take the opportunity of this initial presentation and say a couple of words about the European Investment Bank. For those of you that are not familiar with our activity, we have been around for quite a while, more than 60 years. And our experience is quite broad in financing successful projects. We are, I could say, the natural financing partner for EU institutions and one of the largest climate financiers. Now, our headquarters are in Luxembourg. We have local offices in Europe and outside Europe as well. Some 3,500 staff. It's not just financing experts. It includes engineers, social experts, environmental experts, climate experts. And one of our key objectives, one of a key role, if you like, in the EU, is to close infrastructure gaps in investment gaps. Now, how do we do that? We do that by supporting sound and sustainable projects. What we do is assess the economic and financial and the technical robustness of projects, and we look at their adherence when it comes to environmental and social standards. So for the particular sector and for the particular topic of the day, what is of special interest for us and a particular focused area is the decarbonization angle for that it can bring. And when I think we all share the understanding and the view that one of the challenges of the transport sector for the next years is its decarbonization. Each strand of transport will have to play its role, and all strands of transport will have to complement each other into achieving that objective, whether it's at EU level or at global level. Now, the drone sector has a lot to bring when it comes to this respect. When we look at the sector, we are looking. Another element I would like to pass as a message is that we are looking at the entire ecosystem. We are looking at the entire value chain, which means from aircraft to ATM to passenger solutions. And of course, in all of this, there needs to be a public interest angle for us. I will say this to begin with, and I think we will have an opportunity to dig deeper into certain aspects of financing in the Q&A session. And I pass it back to you, Munish.
Thank you, Ismini. Thank you to all three panelists for sharing your views, and I think you've really covered a diverse set of enablers and activities and things we need to do. There's a whole host of questions coming through, and this is really the most, I'd say, interesting part of this webinar now. We've got a number of questions, so I'd like to kick off with Simon, first of all. Simon, the U-Space regulation came out in April of this year. And it's very clear there are multiple parties involved in there as such. Would you mind sharing with us the role that you think ANSPs are going to play? And whilst addressing that question, if you can try and give us a sense of whether ANSPs in Europe are looking at becoming the CIS, that's the Common Information Service Providers, or the U-Space Service Providers, or a combination of the two. Could you share your thoughts on that, please?
I can. It's a fairly brief answer, I think, to the first question. So ANSPs do have a role, and I think, actually championing the role of ANSPs is right in helping shape the future. But it's about actively leading and supporting the safe, efficient, but secure access to airspace for all airspace users, and I mean that in its entirety, all airspace users, and all the frameworks and the innovation that facilitates that. So in Europe, we're supporting the European Commission and the EASA's work on the U-Space regulatory package, because actually it's a key enabler for delivering the diverse skies. Without that, it's going to get really, really difficult. It also paves the way towards efficient and safe urban air mobility. It's something different, but it's a key part of it. So the regulation represents a new and ambitious challenge, I think, for European NSPs, as you rightly say, there's several options. So at the moment, the data that we have is most European ANSPs, so 66% have already started to implement U-Space systems and are interested in becoming the Central Information Service Providers, as you said, the CIS, and about 50% are also considered becoming U-Space service providers. So, in other words, there's a huge interest, and many are still trying to work out where they can sit and what they can do.
Yeah. No, thanks for providing that overview. I think it's probably the first time that, it gives us some idea that we've learned on where the ANSPs are pitching themselves. Now, there are two very important questions, of course. They're both addressed, I'd say, to a number of you panelists, but I'd like to start with Simon. And they are, one is related to the cost dimension, that's who's going to pay for the usage of use space, and the other one is about ownership of the skies above the cities, because we're focusing a lot more on the urban environment. So let's kick it off with the cost dimension. Simon, from your perspective as the Cancer DG representing the ANSPs, your thoughts on who's actually going to pay for the use of use space, airspace, please.
Yeah, that's I wish you start with an easy one. So. Interestingly enough, in the Global Council, this is one of the big challenges actually that's identified. So how does this get funded? Who pays for all this when we start to deliver this vision of what airspace is going to look like? So, the current revenues being generated by UAS operators is not yet sufficient to support all the investment needed for UTM. And I'm sure from the other end of the spectrum, if you ask the current major airlines around the world, they probably don't see themselves either funding it, which is often, or has been the historic model for funding airspace infrastructure, if it's going to become an infrastructure. Therefore, for me, it's likely that the financing and the payment will take other newer paths and innovative frameworks that either do exist and we're not aware of, or need to be invented. But I do think that in many cases, not all, but in many cases, the development of UTM systems for the integration of UAS into our skies is interlinked. It's quite strongly interlinked with existing ATM systems. So, along with assuring the safety of flight in all types of airspace. So that leads us to the question, should system development and other UTM related costs be included, perhaps, in the cost base regulated at European level? But in general, I think overarching, we, CANSO, me personally, ANSPs recognise the importance of providing a level of certainty to enable the new operators, the new service providers to invest and to help create a flourishing marketplace of these types of services across Europe. It's essential. It has the potential to bring enormous benefit to all of our society. So why wouldn't we recognise that and support it?
Thank you, Simon. And over to you, Eduardo, perhaps, looking at it from a UAM vehicle manufacturer's perspective, what's your expectation that when your eVTOLs are flying in the air, is the use of use-space airspace going to be free? Is there such a thing as free? And if not, who do you think should pay for it?
That's a very interesting question. And, like Simon said, somebody needs to pay for it.
Sure.
If you want to create an ecosystem, all members of that ecosystem should make money. Otherwise, it's not a virtuous ecosystem. Oh. And eventually, for the beginning, maybe there needs to be public money that goes into it, because initially there's going to be no traffic while all this preparation and this investment is being done. So I believe some public support and funding could enable that development initially. And I believe that later on, once our vehicles will be flying, like in commercial aviation, the operators, the people that will be operating our planes will have to pay some fees related to airspace UTM management. Now, the question is, once that model is already running, I hope that those fees will sustain the model. The question is, how do we bring it up?
Yeah.
And I think most of the OEMs we have been looking for private investment. I think for the infrastructure and for the airspace, we really expect political support, public funding support, because at the end of the day, we're doing this for the communities, and we're doing all this infrastructure on non-exclusive basis to any OEM. And even I think that would be a great mechanism to guarantee the fairness and to guarantee also the non-exclusivity of all this new infrastructure, digital or physical, that we will need to build together.
Thank you, Eduardo. That really sets the scene very well for moving to Ismini. So Ismini, it looks like there's private investments coming in, but particularly to the manufacturing side of the eVTOLs. But here's a view. Perhaps there's a role here initially for public money to go in there, particularly to establish the infrastructure required to fly these aircraft safely, securely, and in an efficient manner. What's the role of European Investment Bank here? How is the EIB supporting funding of infrastructure? Could you share your views and if possible, perhaps give us an example or two, please?
Let me unmute myself. Thank you, Munish, for the question. First of all, just to continue from where I left at the beginning. So our key role is to support investment gaps in the EU. Mm-hmm. And we do so through projects that are sound and sustainable. So that applies to all sectors, and it applies to the particular sector as well. Now, the EIB has a number of thoughts around the sector. I would like also to take the opportunity and stress that something that has already been mentioned, that project concepts are right now in different maturity stages, and the also companies that are active in the sector are also in different maturity stages. And that means that we need to address each need in a different, from a different angle, a different perspective. So it might be that we can offer some advisory support when we are talking about concepts that are at a very early stage of development, or when we are talking about identifying the gaps in the ecosystem and identifying where the market is failing or it's not that competitive. And it can also be that we are addressing a certain aspect of the ecosystem in the sector that is quite mature and is ready or can be assessed for a typical loan investment. Now, what is worth mentioning, I believe, is the recently launched facility, which was done together with the European Commission. It's a platform. It's a single entry point where which is provided to stakeholders. It's the European Drone Investment Advisory Platform. Maybe some of the participants are familiar with it, and they can actually access it. I think we can share with the participants the details, the contact details, in order to get a first reaction on whether they stand with their project and with the possibilities of funding or financing, or both. Now, as an example of, as you mentioned, the needs are multiple, and the financing opportunities or the funding opportunities can take many shapes and forms. We recently, for example, engaged, and we are going to support, and we are supporting a larger project with the Greek Civil Service Protection Services. And within that global project, there is a drone element component for the cities of Athens and Thessaloniki. The objective of that component are basically limited to surveillance, because as I mentioned at the beginning, there is a public interest angle that we're always looking at. And this is just an example. I hope I covered your question. Let me know.
I think you have, but there's a follow-on question that involves yourselves and other panelists. There's Daniel from INAIRE, there's our friends from ENAC, and there's Daryl Swanson from United Kingdom. They're all asking what I believe are very similar questions, and that's on how are we going to create the use space market. Now, we understand that initially public money will be needed, and it's possible, and Eduardo also mentioned, that initially we may have to start with phase one with more public funding, but at some point in time, that money needs to be recovered. And at some point in time, we'll have to get to a stage where there is a way of recovering that money, that investment as such, which is what's happening today in the conventional aviation sector as well. So perhaps first I'd like Simon to address that on the thought of a phased manner in which a use-based services market could be established, and where the public funding could be high initially. How do you see the role that the ANSPs are going to play in this transition from first phase to second, and then I'll go to Eduardo. So Simon, could you share your views on the challenges we face to establish such a use-based services market, please?
You really are asking the easy ones today, Manish, I have to say. These are all difficult. These are all difficult. It's like chicken and the egg, isn't it, in some ways? So I think, so the challenge, there's a number of challenges that I think needs to be addressed. And it's in the first challenge, we've talked about it time and time again, is about working together. You know, as an industry, we call it collaboration, we call it working together, but actually this is going to require true working together. No, I think doing anything extraordinary, and I believe bringing UTM and UAS into reality, whether that's market driven or not market driven, actually is something quite extraordinary. So that's difficult, and doing something that difficult and that extraordinary on your own is nearly impossible. So everybody working together is absolutely essential. That's, for me, is the key from a collegiate ecosystem type of point of view. Okay, and there's lots of examples where that's happening around Europe. You know, DFS in Germany with Lunafly, and UK is with Altitude Angel, and DSNA is working with 8 different partners in France, as an example. So there's lots of different examples of that. Is starting. Secondly, though, is the technology and the pace of change. We've heard about, Eduardo rightly said, I can design beautiful aircraft, but if I can't get them airborne and I can't make them work and I can't make them do the job that they're designed to do, then I don't want to do that just yet. So is that, what comes first? The market forces might say those vehicles are wanted and needed and people are prepared to pay for them, but the infrastructure sat around the outside can't perhaps match that pace of change. So, this use-based technology and regulation relies on massive automation, mainly automation, actually. And we have an emergence of all these new actors, these new players, these new innovators, these new, people that think differently. They don't have 100 years of, let me call it baggage. And I don't mean that in a negative way. They don't have 100 years of holding stuff back. They're looking way forward, thinking about things differently. Equally, though, we've got the current aviation system that's got that 100 years of knowledge. And that's enabled exponential growth of air travel to be one of the safest forms of transport across the globe. So Indeed. That equally can't be thrown away. So how do we combine those two to mobilize everything to work together? So that's probably the second challenge. Now, for me, that becomes like, is this a market-driven investment, or is it a government infrastructure investment to allow the market to flourish? Or is it a combination of both? We often worry about, in aviation, this is a personal view, we often worry about aviation of all the moving parts to make something happen, rather than worrying about the performance and the output at the other end. Let's worry about the output on the other end, which is where we come back to, what does it need to look like? What's the future look like? Then we can work out how it happens. At the moment, we're in this conversation of how does it happen? How does it happen? Are we really all clear yet about the what?
Yeah.
Once we're clear about the what, the how will naturally emerge, is my personal view. I hope that's answered the question.
It does, Simon. Thank you for sharing your views, and no doubt, if I can also emphasize from my side, both as a moderator and as well as an employee of Eurocontrol, you know, the market will drive, it will push things to move forward, no doubt. It has done in other technology industries as they've evolved, such as when internet evolved and also when telecoms evolved as such. The difference in this industry is that the element of safety is much higher. The mission critical nature of the integration of drones in the airspace is very, very important. And with that in mind, I'd like to ask Eduardo then. Eduardo, are there technology needs that are required to be developed to support integration of eVTOLs in the airspace? What technology needs do you think, what enablers, someone asked questions earlier on about enablers, what are the enablers that you see from a eVTOL aircraft manufacturer? Please.
From a vehicle standpoint, I think you know, the avionics, the systems, flight control, and communication, you know, are the key core technologies that will enable aircrafts to communicate with other aircrafts in the air, and that will communicate as well with the ground. I believe that the digitalization of air traffic management as such will benefit all industry, commercial aviation first, enabling probably a higher capacity to manage, distancing, and optimization of operations.
Mm-hmm.
And that will be a great foundation and baseline, together with 5G, satellite-based navigation, etc. That will create all the technological ingredients to be able to bring things to reality. I think technology is not the primary problem, as we are discussing. I think the funding of this ecosystem,
right,
the segregation and accountabilities and ownership of that airspace, that will also be a discussion to have around who is owning those urban airspaces and how are they linked, you know, with other classes. I think those are going to be the core of the work that we will all together need to do. I don't think so much that the challenge resides on the technology status today.
Right.
I think it is more, I would say, an organizational, policy and funding problem. And if I may, Munish, just to refer to the prior question, I think there are several examples in aviation where airports were publicly at least partially funded, mm-hmm. Where airlines were also supported, because the increase on GDP or the benefit on the economy of a country or of a city,
right,
is not within the P&L of any private company. Mm. And this is for me an important message. If we're going to develop economies, if we're going to bring new services to our societies, if communities are going to benefit, I think that is the value of public investment. That's what public investment should be there for. And if at the beginning we need to use that public investment as crutches for this ecosystem to get onto their legs, and mature, let's do that, sure. and let's use the opportunity to do that.
Thank you, Eduardo. You've actually taken us into two very important directions. Let's cover them one by one. One direction is that I want to have a discussion about this ownership of airspace above the cities. And the second one is about the role, furthermore, the role of EIB and the public funding in trying to act as a catalyst to kick off the new industry. So let's first take the ownership of the airspace. At Eurocontrol, you know, we are involved in supporting our member states in implementing U-Space. And one of the things, amongst many, that we are currently involved in is to do airspace assessments. We've I think we're involved in at least with about half a dozen today where we're doing airspace assessments, and a number of activities are coming up immediately after that. And one of the things that we've learned so far is all the speakers highlighted the need for stakeholders, and I can't emphasize more. Indeed, the role of stakeholders is paramount. And one of the reasons for that is what we found out in one of the assessments is that when we did the assessment of the airspace above a particular city and also on the ground to look at its current suitability of current infrastructure, one of the things that came up in that meeting, of course, we had the ANSP sitting, the CAA, the municipal corporation, the local authorities, the police, the army, you name it, all the stakeholders sitting in there. And the question was, who owns the airspace above the city, and particularly the lower level airspace? Now, I know, Simon, you will say, well, I'm covering all the easy ones. Here's another easy one for you, but I'm not expecting, I'm not expecting a complete exhaustive list of answers here. I think what I'm looking for is perhaps from all of you, give us a sense of the challenge we face in identifying and then defining the ownership of airspace above the cities. So once again, if I can start with yourself, Simon, and then we'll move on to Eduardo.
Thanks, Mitch. It's interesting. I might challenge the question. Is it the ownership of airspace, or is it who provides the services in those airspace? And they're two very different things. Right. Airspace is I think at a macro level is state owned. Above that state, any airspace is state owned. Now, whoever provides services within that airspace is different, and it's different. It's probably in some countries is always one company or one organization that does it, but equally you've got the military providing services in some airspace, you've got ANSPs providing services, you've got the local airfield that's providing VFR services. You've got all sorts of different services already, and I don't see a city being any different. Whoever provides the services in those airspace still needs to be safe. There probably has to be some regulation around it, some standard setting around it. But actually, who provides those services is down to either the state itself, or it could be the local city council. It depends on the type of services that are being provided, and comes back to that original question: who's going to pay for it? Because whoever's going to pay for those services will determine the ownership.
No, I didn't expect any more than that, Simon. I think we go back to what you said earlier. It's a chicken and egg situation, really. And I think what you've highlighted very well, and so have the other panelists, is we're almost in a unique situation where the conventional aviation industry, perhaps for the first time, is trying to talk to the stakeholders of non-conventional aviation industries. Now, the two worlds talk a different language, they have different terminology as we go through it. They have a different way of looking at things as such. And I think we will need time, as you very well highlighted, I'm just reiterating your words, we will need time to understand each other in these stakeholder community, to find out, do they see the world green, or do they see the way we do it, and so on and so forth. I'd like to move the discussion now to the funding side, and for public money to act as a catalyst that Eduardo brought up. And perhaps I'll first start with Ismini yourselves. Here's an example then. So public money is used, no doubt, for a number of reasons to provide public services, to improve lives of citizens as such. We've seen our cities gone through transformation over the many years, where we've built bridges, tunnels, and all kinds of civil and civic infrastructure to help the transportation of goods, transportation of people. Just take any city, whether it's London, Amsterdam, Frankfurt, Madrid, any city as such. Now we've got a new dimension, the third dimension, that urban air mobility provides. Is it conceivable that urban air mobility can actually compete in a city with other modes of transport in a way that the public money that has been invested in creating bridges and tunnels, and I use these two as specific examples, to transport goods and passengers and humans, Could we in future see less investment in those modes of transport, but perhaps more investment in transporting goods and people in the air using urban air mobility? Can I start with you, Ismini, and then I'd like to go to Eduardo from a vehicle manufacturer's point of view. So over to you, Ismini.
Yes, thank you, Munish. I wouldn't use the word competing. I think a more appropriate word would be complementing, and this is how we need to see it. We need to see all modes of transport in an integrated way, one completing each other in order to achieve the objectives that are set, because we need to remember that there are some overarching objectives that can only be achieved. And as an example, before I already mentioned the decarbonization targets for the sector.
Right.
These can only be achieved if the different strands, the different subsectors in the transport sector complement each other. So I don't see it as a competition, but as actually a successful integration and solution to achieving the overarching objectives that we have.
Okay, so thank you. Eduardo, your thoughts on this, please? I mean, you are representing a company that's producing already the eVTOLs. How do you see the view going forward, particularly within the cities?
I would like to throw some numbers out there to put things into perspective. If you assume a fleet of 50 vehicles, VX4s, 50 of our vehicles deployed in a city, our estimations tell us that actually you'll be flying above 500,000 people per year.
Okay.
You'll be probably saving, if you deploy that fleet in 2025, in 2030, you will probably have not emitted around 45,000 tons of carbon. Those are facts, but that is not a mass transportation. I echo what Ismini said. We're talking about complementing. We're not competing. We are creating a new dimension that people will be able to use. Now, I would like to bring two different examples on the table. People that lived in islands during winter, when there are no tourists, and they need to go for a chemotherapy or a dialysis treatment.
Yeah.
Today, they use ferries that are probably oversized with a huge carbon footprint, not optimized, or they might use emergency transport from helicopter at a particular cost. All that usually is subsidized. That is public money. If we're able to bring alternatives that are cheaper, that can secure that those social services beyond the mobility are also covered, actually we would be saving money to the taxpayers. And that money could be used for other things. So I think there are different dimensions to this. I would like to echo the idea of complementing. And I would like to echo the idea of this is not a silver bullet.
Yeah.
You know, and I think we need to be mindful of that.
No, that's very well said, and I think I do agree that the future is in connecting multiple modes of transport. And I know that European Commission is working already. Some policies have come in recently as such from the DG Move on that, and that really is the future. You talk about the eVTOLs flying over the cities and such. Can you give us a sense, Eduardo, from a vehicle manufacturer's perspective, are there even any buyers of aircrafts today? I mean, we are talking about a lot of this stuff at the strategic level, but I'd like to bring some sense of reality. Are there any buyers today, please?
Absolutely, and this is where I was talking and making a bit of history, because now we have real customers that are expecting our products. In the case of Vertical, we have more than 1,000 pre-orders, conditional pre-orders. We have American Airlines that has pre-ordered 350 planes that we plan to deploy in the US. We have Virgin here in the UK that has also, agreed to 150 conditional pre-orders. And of course, we have Avalon, one of the biggest lessors in the world, that has also agreed to 500 planes on conditional pre-order. And I'm very happy to share the news of today. Today, we made public that Bristow Helicopters, one of the most respected and biggest helicopter operators in the world, has actually, agreed to a conditional pre-order of 50 planes.
Oh,
and
okay.
that might sound a small step, but for me, it's a huge one, because we're starting to see airliners that want to transit their passengers and give them an additional experience. We're starting to see helicopter operators that want to go green, that want to reduce the direct operating costs of their machines. And you will see, mobility providers, tourism operators. This is not just a single bucket or a single target market. I think there are a lot of people in the world that need to, to secure mobility of passengers. And, I think our eVTOLs are starting to show up as the right solution for them. So yes, there are customers out there that we need to serve. And this is why this is so important that we develop this ecosystem together.
Well, thank you, Eduardo, and congratulations, no doubt. I hope to see more of those from, not just from your company, but also your competitors, because at the end of the day, we as a community supporting urban air mobility and its integration in conventional airspace, we want to see the integration and safety of it to be done efficiently and effectively. Philip Butterworth-Hayes from UK is asking a question. What are the revenue possibilities and investment challenges for local authorities in developing a UAM ecosystem? I'd like to take the second part of the question in the limited time we've got available. We've only got 5 minutes available. And perhaps this, I'd like to go back to Smini, and that's more the investment challenges as such. Ismini, you gave us an overview of where the European Investment Bank is providing a facility for funding infrastructure required for U-Space. Does this funding cover certain parts of the infrastructure, or does it cover the entire value chain of the overall drone as well as the eVTOL and U-Space and UAM market? Could you give us a sense of where that funding might be available, please?
So let me start by clarifying, first of all, the function of the platform. The platform functions has an advisory role. So, and the advisory role, what it translates to is that the stakeholders, the interested parties can access it and have a pre-screening of their ideas, of their projects, and depending on their maturity, there are different steps to follow. Now, for the EIB, as you know already, we have our products, which include loans, which include guarantees, which include investment equity, and already mentioned the advisory services that we offer. Now, when it comes to standard investment loans, we look at the entire ecosystem. Just as long as it fulfills certain eligibility criteria, and with a special focus on certain aspects, like the full decarbonization of the proposal that brings the proposal, and with it, and of course the public interest angle that it must have.
Okay, thank you. So does that mean that, I don't know, the question came from a city perspective. Can a city also be an entity that applies for funding for infrastructure development within its own city perimeter, as long as the criteria is met, or do you only look at technology providers and system providers. Can cities also apply for such a funding?
Well, I think that we don't have limitations when it comes to who has access to us. So it depends from what it is that the cities are bringing forward to us.
Right. Okay. Okay.
Yes.
No, that's a fair enough.
Yes.
That's fair enough. So where can people go and get more information, please? Can they go to the website of European Investment Bank and be able to see that?
I think that one of my colleagues shared the address on the site chat. I saw it floating at some point.
Right. Okay.
Yes, but we can share it with the attendees, of course, when you send out the dissemination material.
Oh, excellent. Thank you. So I think just for members of audience, if you go to your chat window, you will probably see a hyperlink there that you can use to get further information about the EIB funding. We're getting very close to that time that I'm going to have to wrap up. I think I will just go through perhaps one more question that a number of people have asked, and I think it was really about. On one hand, in that question, there's a fear, and on the other hand, there appears to be an opportunity. And the question revolves around what are the chances that what we are doing in Europe for use space and urban air mobility, that what we develop here will be compatible and harmonized across the world? Or are we going to get to a stage where in different parts of the world, they come up with different way of doing things as such? Maybe let me start with Simon and then Eduardo, and I think after that we'll wrap up this webinar. Over to you, Simon.
Thank you, Manish. So I think Europe are doing a very good job actually in this world in terms of trying to set the standards and the regulations. They are forging ahead, and the rest of the world can benefit from that actually, which is the important thing. Now, do I think that every region in the world will have exactly the same answer? No, and I don't think that's necessarily right. There are different needs, there are different requirements, there are different services that are provided. There should be some high-level standards, I think, to help with that. But actually, in the more detailed things will be slightly different, as long as it's compatible and as long as it's consistent. I'm sure Eduardo does not want to have 55 countries with 55 different regulations with 55 different, he has to have a propeller on the left rather than the right. I'm making it up, in terms of depending on where he is. So I think that's wrong. So there's some high level standards that absolutely should be there. And I don't see a problem with that. But I suppose where it comes back to, the regulator needs to move as fast as the industry can move in doing this. And, there's a risk that if that doesn't happen, you're going to get more fragmentation. So the regulator needs to move as fast, needs to become more innovative to match the industry, to enable all this to happen. If they can do that, then I don't see that as being a problem.
Thank you, Simon. Eduardo, over to you, but with a little extension, if I may, is you are a global company. You'll be looking to selling your equipment, your aircraft globally and not just in Europe. So that has a particular impact on you. But when you do answer that, perhaps you could also cover another question that John Vincent is asked, and that is, in order for us to achieve this global outlook into all this, are we sharing enough within the various aerospace companies in the value chain so that every part of that value chain has the relevant information, required information, and with the fear that if we don't do that, then we could be as strong as our weakest system? Your last views on that one, please.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of collaboration between different regulators in the different regions of the world, and I fully echo what Simon said. We have a beautiful example, which is commercial aviation, where planes fly into different regions. There's already, that exists. We don't need to reinvent the wheel, and that works. So I think we should also, try to take those examples and put them in. I also believe that there's a lot of work that is being done through the different industrial standard groups on the different elements of the value chain, where industry and different companies gets together to look for standards for charging infrastructure. We look for a standard on avionics, on a lot of different topics. So I think we need to continue and even accelerate this work. And you know, I would probably be a bit critical on us, on the OEMs. We should actually share more.
Right.
And probably that is also linked to the fact that we're all small companies, and cooperation is not that easy at the beginning. But we need to make that effort. And I would invite regulators to share more as well and to work more together, because the portability of certification, the way we architecture the airspace, that is going to help us scale the industry or not.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you, Eduardo. And I think the time has come that we need to wrap up this webinar. I'd like to first of all thank Raul and Eamon for their opening remarks, and a big thanks to all three of you for what I thought was an open, frank, and an interactive quality in a Q&A session. So thank you for your contribution. And I'm sure, ladies and gentlemen, you will have enjoyed this webinar. I'd just like to summarize perhaps the top 6 things that we've discussed today. As such, I think all three of the panelists, as well as the keynote speakers in the beginning, highlighted the importance of stakeholder management. We've got different groups of people from conventional and non-conventional aviation. We need stakeholder management, we need to focus on it. There are challenges on identifying ownership of the airspace, and quite rightly challenged by Simon, because that ownership is related to who provides services. So we need to think about that one. We need to look at how to create the use-based market so that the public funds, which first get invested into bringing it up, acting as a catalyst, but they need to be recovered later on. We need to look at technology enablers, and thank you, Eduardo, for focusing on some of those from an aircraft perspective that you highlighted. We need funding for infrastructure development, because that is one area where funding has been lacking so far in the entire ecosystem. And lastly, very pleasing to see that we're not just talking here, coming up with good stories and talking strategically. There are actually orders being placed for aircrafts out there. And Eduardo, thank you for sharing that. With that, I'd like to thank all of you and all the members of the audience for being with us. I wish you a pleasant rest of the day. Have a wonderful afternoon or evening, wherever you are, and come back again. Now, just to let you know that our next webinar will be held on the 23rd of September, and that's on sustainable aviation fuels, followed by one on the 7th of October on cyber resilience in aviation. So please do come back and join us. Have a good day. Bye-bye.